Hello everyone, my name is Abhishek and welcome back to my channel. Today is episode 4 of Azure Zero to Hero series, and in this video we will learn about a bunch of concepts. Firstly, we'll start with the virtualization recap because I have already explained virtualization in detail on day 1, but we will do a quick recap and try to understand what is virtualization. Then I'll show you how to create a virtual machine on the Azure platform. While creating a virtual machine, you have to provide a bunch of parameters. For example, what type of virtual machine are you looking for? A CPU optimized, memory optimized. There are a bunch of parameters that you have to fill. So I will walk you through each and every parameter so that you understand how to create virtual machine efficiently. Then we will proceed with connecting to the virtual machine and deploying our first application on that virtual machine. So we'll take a DevOps application and try to install on the virtual machine. Finally, I'll also talk about virtual machine scale sets. So today is an introduction for virtual machine scale sets. In future classes, we will understand more about it. So this is what we are going to cover in today's video. So please try to watch this video till the end. Now, before I start the concepts for day 4, let me quickly remind you that this is the GitHub repository that I'm going to maintain throughout this Azure Zero to Hero series. From day 1 to day 25, you will see this day-wise folders, and inside each folder, you will find the notes for that particular folder or the day. So using these MD files, you can quickly revise, use these materials as revision once you watch the videos. So please start this repository so that you get the continuous updates. Okay, so now let's proceed and start with understanding the first thing, virtualization. So if you want the complete details of virtualization, please refer to the day 1. But if I have to explain this in a very simple way, so it all started with physical servers, right? Previously, people used to buy the physical servers, and system engineers or system administrators used to get this bunch of physical servers. This is one physical server, let's say. So every organization used to maintain bunch of physical servers if it is a private cloud. Similarly, now if you talk about public cloud such as Azure or AWS, now they procure these bunch of physical servers. But the problem with these physical servers is that these physical servers comes with huge amount of compute. Like one physical server, for example, might have let's say 1,000 CPUs, right? One physical server might come with probably, let's say, 100 TB of memory, and it comes with little bit of local storage if you assign it. Otherwise, it also comes with other capabilities. So now assigning one physical server to one developer or DevOps engineer or a QA engineer is too much, because they will definitely waste these resources, right? To use these physical servers effectively, there is a concept called as virtualization, right? And what does this virtualization do? Basically, the concept of virtualization is that you will install, previously it used to be system administrators. Now in the public cloud, let's say Azure, there is a dedicated team. And if you have a private cloud, probably DevOps engineers might do it. But on an overall basis, so what happens in the concept of virtualization is someone goes to this physical server and installs a particular software. That software is called as a hypervisor. And this hypervisor is capable of logically dividing this physical machine. So it can logically split this physical machine so that multiple people can use this physical server, right? If you are directly assigning this physical server to someone, what happens is they would waste the resources. Instead, using the concept of virtualization, someone would install the hypervisor on top of each physical machine so that this physical machine is logically divided into multiple parts. And now you can say that, okay, let me assign this part to developer 1, this part to developer 2, so on. So instead of one person using it, probably 100 people can use it, or 1,000 people can use it. or probably 10,000 people can also use it, depending upon how much small portions you are logically separating it into and how big your physical server is, right? So you don't have to go into the details of it because these days, mostly this is taken care by the public cloud providers. Now, if you talk about Azure, so what Azure does is, I mean, let's talk about it hypothetically. So what Azure does is Azure picks up or Azure purchases a lot of these physical servers. Let's say that they are buying it from IBM or they're buying it from any vendor. Okay. And what Azure does is inside their data center, let's say this is zone one of East US. Okay. So inside the zone one of East US, that is the data center, they will place these multiple servers. And inside each of these servers, they would install hypervisors. And this hypervisor can logically split these servers into multiple parts. So this is how, when you request for a virtual machine on the Azure platform, so Azure will look at the details that you are requesting for, and this goes to the Azure Resource Manager. And depending upon the request that you have created, Azure will look into its data center. Okay, so Abhishek has requested for a virtual machine with, let's say, 1 CPU and 2 GB RAM. And Abhishek wants this virtual machine to be on the zone 1 of East US. So Azure picks up this request, goes to the zone 1 of East US, and from all of these servers, it will look into one particular portion where your resources that you are requesting for is available. You know, this can happen dynamically or statically. That means Azure might have already done this for you. Azure might have placed lot of virtual machines, and if someone requests for it, Azure will directly assign you one particular virtual machine. Or it can also happen dynamically. Looking at your request, the hypervisor, Azure sends that request to the hypervisor, and hypervisor immediately creates the configuration that you have requested for. Let's say if this server has a lot of CPU, has a lot of RAM and all the things. So hypervisor installed on this might pick up your request and, okay, you want 1 CPU and 2 GB, let me create it and give it to you, right? So this can happen dynamically or statically. This is the process, and this entire process is called as virtualization. And the software that is implementing this concept of virtualization is called as hypervisor. Got it? So this is about virtualization. And if you want to understand it more, little bit more detail, let's say, Abhishek, I'm coming from a non-IT background and I did not get it, then please go to day one, because in day one, I have explained virtualization and virtual machine in much detail way. If you have understood it, then it's fine. Let's proceed with creation of virtual machine. So again, if you have a Microsoft Azure account, this is the landing page that you would see for student account or the free trial account. There are different ways on how to navigate to the creation of virtual machines. You can click on this icon and you can search for virtual machines, or these are some of the frequently used services. So you can click on virtual machines from here, or you can also go to the search bar and type virtual machine. In any of these things, you can go and navigate to the virtual machine. Let me click on one of these things. And you have an option here to create the virtual machine. Click on that. There are a bunch of details that you have to provide, like I have explained in last class. Let's try to understand each and every detail. And many of you are also asking me about the pricing. Let me make it very clear. For the first 30 days of a free trial account that you create, Microsoft Azure won't charge you because you already have 15,500 free credits. So anything that you are using will get deducted from that 15,500 or 13,300 free credits. If you are in the US region, you get $200 free credits. Once you complete this 1 month, what happens is that you will get a notification that your free trial has expired. Do you want to convert this account into the pay as you go model? And only if you give that consent. If you say yes, only after that, depending upon your usage, Microsoft Azure will start charging you. If you don't give the consent, your account will be suspended. You will not be able to use the account and create any resources depending upon the subscription that you have. If you have a free subscription, you will have to move to the pay-as-you-go model after the 30 days. Only then you will be able to use services and do some projects on the Microsoft Azure portal. Because many people are worried about it, I am trying to explain. And if you have any questions about the billing, apart from this, let me know in the comment section. But one thing, you have given the debit card, you have given the credit card, but only if you give the consent that I want to move towards the pay-as-you-go model, then Microsoft Azure will charge you. Otherwise, it won't charge you. Don't worry about that. And each resource, they have the free subscription model where, for example, the virtual machine. Virtual machine can be used for free, and virtual machine can also be used in the pay-as-you-go model. So whenever I explain about a service, I'll talk about those parameters that will impact the billing for you. First thing that you see here is a subscription. And whenever you see a star here, that means it's a mandatory field. So subscription, by default, we are using a free trial account. So this field will be automatically filled with free trial. And then there is another mandatory field, that is resource group. Resource group is a very important concept. I have explained this very detailed in the last class. It's nothing but grouping of resources in Azure. And by grouping this, you can monitor the resources for cost. You can monitor the resources for access, security, bunch of things that you can do. And create a resource group. If you don't have, just go here, search for resource groups, take it in a new tab and create a resource group. You just have to provide one detail, just the name of the resource group. In my case, I have already created. This is a demo resource group. Virtual machine name, we can give anything. Let me call it as first VM. Region, always pick up a region that is near to you, right? If you are in India, pick up a region that is nearby, whatever Microsoft Azure provides. Click on the drop down and you will find all the regions that are available. Asia Pacific, South America, Middle East. Because we are doing it for the first time, let's keep it default. But in future classes, we will pick up the regions that are nearby. Then availability zones. There are a bunch of availability zones for the East US. For some, there can be two zones. For some, there can be three, depending upon the region that you are picking up. What are availability zones? In a nutshell, they are the data centers. And you don't know where these data centers are located. So they are called with zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. You can pick up anything. Security type, don't change anything. Image. This is one that can impact the billing. So there are these free services eligible images which you need to use if you want to use for free. If you are working in your organization, obviously, depending upon the request that comes to you, let's say if a developer is requesting for Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8.7, go with it and it will come with a pricing, right? So it comes with a definite pricing. But otherwise, go with the free services eligible. Most of the demos that we do, they can be performed on the free services eligible. And whenever it's not, I'll tell about it. Then there are two architectures. One is ARM, one is x86-64. So let's leave it to x64. Azure Spot Discount, what exactly this is? It's a very interesting concept. If you try to understand, Microsoft Azure has a lot of servers, they have a lot of data centers, and they have regions. Obviously, they cannot use the complete resources for 100%, right? There will be some unused resources, even though Azure use the concept of virtualization, the concept of containerization, and any modern techniques that they have. Still, there will be some unused resources with Microsoft Azure. And if these things are not used properly, Microsoft Azure will waste these resources. So that's why what Azure does is they will give you these unused resources for special discount. So you can click on this option and you have to provide the eviction type, eviction policy, which means these resources can go down anytime. If you are choosing virtual machine with Azure Spot Discount, that means Azure does not guarantee you that this virtual machine will be available. So you cannot run the production workloads. You cannot use these kind of things for your production purposes. You can only use it for your proof of concept and development purposes. You can read more about Azure Spot instances, but this is the whole concept of it. Size, this is another important factor where the billing is incurred. So there are different types of sizes of virtual machine that Azure offers you. Let's take simple example. You want to buy a laptop. Obviously, you have different configurations of your uh, laptop choice, right? You can buy laptop of 1 CPU, 3.5 GB RAM. You can buy laptop of 2 CPU, 4 GB RAM. You can buy laptop of 4 CPU, 14 GB RAM. What happens? Depending upon the configuration that you're choosing, the laptop seller will cost you. If you are picking up a laptop with less CPU and less RAM, that laptop will charge you less. But obviously, apart from CPU and RAM, there are multiple other parameters. For example, what type of laptop that you want? Do you want it for gaming purpose? Do you want it for just reading purpose? Or do you want to do some business operations on it? Depending upon such configurations, and also depending upon the IOPS, the storage, do you want laptop with 16 GB storage, 1 TB storage? Considering all of these factors, the person who is selling the laptop to you, he will charge or she will charge the amount. Same thing, even Azure does. For example, there are general purpose virtual machines. Then you have the memory optimized virtual machines. You have CPU optimized virtual machines. So Abhishek, there are so many kinds of virtual machines here. How do I understand which one should I pick up? So for that, you need to understand the requirement very clearly. What is the developer asking you, or what is the testing engineer asking you? What kind of virtual machine they want? So depending upon that, you will create. For example, if they're asking about a general purpose one, that is, if they want to run any kind of application on that virtual machine, they don't have any specific requirements. All that I want is I want to deploy this on a production server, create a production server where I'm not thinking of any complicated configuration. Just give me a basic one. Then you will go with DS configuration. If someone is asking you that, no, Abhishek, my applications are very memory intense applications where I'm running workloads such as Redis, right? Redis is basically an in-memory cache. So they will ask you for a virtual machine because they want to run Redis application on top of it. Then you have to go for memory optimized virtual machines. So there is a very detailed list here. Don't worry. There is this page called virtual machine series where it provides the complete details. And also on my GitHub page, just go to Day-4 folder. There is a file called vmtypes.md where I have given you use cases, examples, and in which case you have to pick up which virtual machine. Let's spend some time to understand that. Series A, right? What are these things? These are nothing but the ones that you see here, right? So there is B series, D series, E series. So let's try to understand what is the meaning of each series. A series, technically you can ignore it because this will retire on 31st of August 2024. But just for your knowledge, these are virtual machines that you can create for just development and test purposes. You cannot create these virtual machines if someone is requesting for a production use case. If they want to use a virtual machine for deploying their application and making it live for the customers, then you should not use this A series. Anyways, you can ignore it because it's going to retire. Then you have B series. B series are strictly for free trial use cases only. That is, they are only for proof of concepts and they are only for learning the Azure platform or very simple use cases that you have. Because these machines come with very less CPU and very less RAM. Like they might come with 1 CPU, 1 GB RAM, less than your mobile phone. So small these virtual machines are. So that's why they are called as economical bustable virtual machines. In real time, if you are working in your organization, probably most of the times you won't be using this B series unless someone is doing some simple proof of concepts. Then you have this D series. So this series is used for general purpose applications where if developer or QA engineer comes to you and if they say that I don't have any specific use case. I just want a virtual machine so that I can deploy my application on the production system. Then create this D series. But if they come to you and say that, hey, I have an application which is very memory intense. Best example is Redis. If they want to deploy Redis, then Redis comes with a lot of in-memory caching, in-memory data storing. So for such particular applications, where if they say the applications are memory intense, create the E series ones. And if they say that my virtual machines are compute intense, what are compute intense? Basically, the batch services or cron jobs where multiple process gets run, right? If your application is running a lot of process, best example, multi-threaded applications or batch processing applications, gaming applications, where concurrently multiple people will log in. So there will be multiple processes that are running. In such cases, create the F series ones. Then you have G series, H series. H series is nothing but high performance, where if you want very high performance applications that you want, then you can go with H series. Then you have L series, which is storage optimized virtual machines. If someone says that, hey, I want very high quality storage systems, like I want a SSD storage, right? What is SSD? Basically, if the virtual machines which you have requires a lot of processing the data, and if the virtual machines that you are looking for needs high quality SSDs, then go with the storage optimized virtual machines. Best example again is if someone is running a database on top of a virtual machine, if they are running MongoDB, Cassandra DB, or if they're running NoSQL database, what does databases do? They store the data on the storage, and all the time they retract the data and give it to the user, or they insert the data. So these database kind of applications, they talk a lot with the storage. So you want the high performance storage where they can perform multiple storage operations. They can write, they can read very fast. So in such cases, go with L series. So you have multiple such series, and depending upon your requirement, you will go with the type of virtual machines. And if someone is asking you for running a machine learning or large language models, you will create N series. And this comes with experience. Don't worry at all. And if someone is creating a request, you can also go to this page and you can talk with them. See, I'm planning to create you a N series virtual machine. And for N series, these are the things that you will get. If you go here and search for N series, or let's say search for D series. So you can explain them. I'm giving you a general purpose virtual machine with 2 CPU and 7 GB RAM. This is the configuration that I feel suits your application. But if you have something else, you provide me the configuration and I will create that kind of virtual machine for you. Most of the times, DevOps engineers get this requirement that someone will say you that I want N series virtual machine. You go and create that one. Going back, for the demo purposes, we will always use this B1S, or the one that you see here called as free services eligible. And then, of course, to connect to the virtual machine, you need an authentication tag, right? So for that, do you want to connect through password or SSH? Most recommended is SSH. So let's create on that. Let's click on that and provide username, provide generate new key pair, because we are doing it for the first time. Let Azure create a key pair for us, and it will give you the key when you click on the create button. You can download it and access this virtual machine using the SSH protocol that I'll show you how to do it. Don't worry about this inbound ports at this point of time. We will learn very detailed in tomorrow's class, which is dedicated for virtual machine networking. So click on the review and create. So we have provided all the required parameters, and now we are proceeding with the creation of virtual machine. It will take some time. It depends upon the network and other things. So just wait while the virtual machine creation is taking place. So here you get an option, download private key and create resource, right? So this is where you have to download the private key, because without the private key, you cannot log into the Azure virtual machine that you are creating. There are only two options. One is SSH using the private key. Other thing is using the password, but we choose SSH using the private key, which is the standard way. So that's why you have to download the private key. Click on the download button. It gets saved in your downloads folder, right? Now it will take a couple of minutes for the Azure virtual machine to be created. Please wait. You can also watch the resources that are getting created. Like I mentioned you, tomorrow you will learn details of Azure virtual machine networking. So if you go back to the course syllabus, where we will understand all the concepts such as virtual network, we will try to understand what is an NSG, ASG, subnets, CIDR, how does the traffic flow to the virtual machine. Like if I hit the virtual machine, the applications that are hosted on the virtual machine, how is the traffic flowing to the virtual machine? It can be public IP, private IP. We will learn that in the tomorrow's class, right? So let's go back and see if the virtual machine is created. Perfect. Your deployment is complete. That means my virtual machine is available. Now go to the home screen, click on virtual machines. Here you see the first virtual machine that we created, first-VM. So subscription, free trial, resource group, demo, created in the location that we have asked for. And size is standard underscore B1S, again, something that we have asked for. This is the public IP address that is granted. So using this public IP address, we will try to log into the Azure virtual machine, right? So click on this for more information if you're looking at, right? Just copy the public IP address. And now comes the important point. There are two ways to connect to it. One is you can use the Azure shell. So if you see this option here, click on it, and there is a online shell that gets opened, but I will not recommend this, right? I'll explain you about the Azure shell, how to use it. It's very simple, but it's not a recommended way because that is not how DevOps engineers use the Azure platform. What you need to do is you need to download a terminal on your laptop. So if you are using Windows machine, what I would recommend is Git Bash. So go with Git Bash if you are using a Windows machine. Otherwise, if you are on Mac, you can use iTerm. So this is my iTerm. It's called iTerm. And if you are on Windows machine, download Git Bash. Let's say you don't want to do it. You want to use either Putty or let's say you want to use something like MobiXterm, then don't worry. I have a very detailed video. If you go to my YouTube channel and just search for Abhishek.Veeramalla, connect EC2 instance from a Windows laptop and click on the search button, you will get this detailed video, how to connect to a virtual machine. Of course, this is on the AWS, but the steps are the same. So you can connect to Azure virtual machine also by downloading and following the same steps. But I will recommend Git Bash so that you can follow the Linux commands. Git Bash installs SSH for you on your laptop. Just go to your browser and search for Git Bash. It's very simple to download. And if you have already installed Git, you will already have it. Go to your Windows search bar and search for Git Bash. Perfect. Now let me take my terminal. First, copy the IP address one more time. Clear the screen. Ignore the folders that you see here, name that you see here. It depends on the terminal that you are using. So don't worry about that. Just look at the commands that I'm using. SSH -i. -i stands for identity file. So I have to go to the path where my private key is downloaded. So in my case, it's the download folders is users, Abhishek.Veeramalla, downloads, and inside the downloads, first VM private key is downloaded. And then provide the username. Username is Azure user @ the public IP address. So this is the command. Let me explain the command one more time. SSH -i, we are using this particular PEM file. So that's why I'm using -i. If you are using username and password, then you don't have to use this particular command you don't need to use this particular argument called -i because this is only used when you are using the PEM file. I stands for identity. Then you have to provide the username as Azure user and password, sorry, the IP address as the one that you see on the screen, right? Whatever Azure provides you as a public IP address, use that. Just enter yes. You will get this error because the identity file that is downloaded from the Azure platform, it has all the permissions, right? On a Linux machine, anyone can access it, but that is not acceptable. Because PEM files are very secure, you have to change the permissions. So to change the permissions, you have to type chmod. Again, the reason why I'm asking you to download git bash and not use putty or moba because these commands might not work if you are not using git bash. Then you have to go to your Windows machine, search for this PEM file and click on right click, go to the permissions directory, add permissions, which can be slightly complicated process, right? That's why say chmod 600 followed by the location. Now again, let's try the command. I think this time it should work. It's trying to SSH. Perfect. Now you can see that I have logged into my Azure first virtual machine. This is how you log into the virtual machine that is created on the Azure platform. Now, this is a Ubuntu virtual machine. If you have created CentOS, the commands that I'm going to do now might differ. So try to follow the same steps and try to create the Ubuntu virtual machine only. So what next? We have created the virtual machine. We have connected to the virtual machine. Let's learn how to deploy an application to it and access it from the internet, right? We will do a very simple application. We will deploy the Jenkins application because Jenkins is one of the DevOps applications and DevOps engineers quite frequently do this task. So they install Jenkins on virtual machines. Let's try to do that in today's video. Again, you don't have to worry about the steps. Just go to my GitHub repository, Jenkins 0 to hero, and just follow the commands as is, right? If you scroll down, you will find the steps, each and everything. Start with installing Java because Java is a prerequisite for running Jenkins. So just copy these commands here, go back to your virtual machine, shoot the commands. Every time you have a virtual machine, the first thing that you do is you have to update the repositories of that virtual machine, right? Because this is a Ubuntu virtual machine, you have to run sudo apt update. Now you might ask me, Abhishek, what exactly is this command? Every distribution, it can be Ubuntu, it can be CentOS, each has their own package managers. For example, if you want to install Java, either you can go to the browser, download Java, or the better thing is you can use their inbuilt package managers. That's why they are called package managers. Of course, you cannot get all the packages, but standard packages can be installed using this package managers. If you're using CentOS, you can run yum install Java, for example. If you're using Ubuntu, you can run apt install Java. So these are the package managers. And every first time that you install a virtual machine, you have to update the package manager using apt update. What it does is every package manager has some repositories. When you run this command, the repositories get updated. Now next run sudo apt install openjdk, which is for installing Java. Click on Y, verify if Java is installed. Perfect, Java is up and running. Now let's proceed with the next step here. So here, these are the commands to run Jenkins. So I have already put all of these commands in the GitHub repository. If you want, you can go to the Jenkins website and also search for these commands, but you have it already. So just clear the screen and execute them. Perfect. Now this installation is also complete. So what happens is when you install Jenkins or any application, those applications run on a particular port, right? This is your Linux box. To understand ports in a simple way, basically there can be multiple applications running on this virtual machine. To access those applications, you need to access IP address colon a particular port. So when you hit that particular port, that means you are trying to access that particular application. So every application will have a unique port. You can get that, or you can see if that process is running by just running this command called ps -ef, which is basically searching all the running processes on this particular machine. Pipe grep, I want to only verify if Jenkins is running or not. See here, Jenkins process is running and it said it is running on the port 8080, right? That means if you try to access this particular IP address, what is the IP address? This is the IP address colon 8080, you should access the Jenkins machine. So if you just go to your browser, of course, there will be an error. I'll tell you why, but http colon / IP address. Sorry, I think I did not copy. This is the IP address http colon / IP address colon 8080. So this particular port will tell the IP address or the virtual machine that user is trying to access Jenkins application. If you give any other port, your request will not go to the Jenkins application. So every application running on a virtual machine will have a unique port. So now if you try to access, of course, it will not work, because in Azure or in cloud providers, there is a concept where ports are blocked by default. You have to open the port. That is for the security reasons. And it's very simple. You can go to the virtual machine. Just go to this virtual machine. And here you have something called as network settings. Go to that particular thing. And tomorrow's class, when we learn about virtual machine networking, we will learn about this networking settings. We will learn about the security things that I was talking about in much detailed way. For now, just go to the network settings. And if you scroll down, you will find inbound, outbound. Inbound means traffic that is coming to your application. Outbound means traffic going out of your application or virtual machine. So here, only port 22 is open. Let's open 8080 port. Why 22 is open? Because we were trying to SSH into the virtual machine. Even SSH is a traffic that is coming to the virtual machine. If you disable this port 22, like if you delete this particular rule, what happens is SSH will also not work. So it can be traffic that is coming from your browser. It can be SSH traffic or any traffic. You need to open the port. So now let me create a new inbound port rule. And here there are two major things. One is source and one is destination. So destination is our application and the instance, that is the virtual machine. Source is people who are trying to access. That can be from the internet or people within your organization. So let's keep the users who are trying to access as any, because right now we are not worried about people who are trying to access. We just want to expose our application to everyone. But in future, we will restrict these to particular group. We will restrict it to a particular IP address that we will learn later. For now, let's open our application to everyone. That is source. Destination, again, let's keep it any, but you can also keep it as your IP address, because your application is only accessed on your particular thing, but let's keep it as any for today's class. Service as custom, port as 8080, which is the Jenkins application port. Protocol should be any, because you don't know from where the users are accessing and what kind of protocol. So let's keep the protocol as any. Action allow. Priority, for now, let's keep it as 400. I'll talk about the priority. Click on add. Okay, let me call it as, let me just change it. In my case, there is already a rule that exists. So don't worry, in your case, it will work. So the rule is created successfully and immediately you can see Jenkins is accessed. I did not even refresh the screen. It's automatically accessed. That means now Azure started accepting the traffic, or the instance started accepting the traffic. Because our application is deployed in the public subnet, when we learn about virtual machine networks, we will also learn about private subnets. What happens if the application is deployed in the private subnets? But for today's class, you can give yourself a clap because you have deployed your first application on the Azure portal, and you have deployed a real-time application, Jenkins, which is a common use case, right? Now, I'll not go into the details of Jenkins because I have a dedicated playlist. There is multiple examples. We have done a lot of tutorials. So if you want to learn about Jenkins, you can go to our Jenkins playlist. But the goal for today is to deploy a real-time application on the Azure platform public subnet, which we have done. So the final concept that is left to learn today is virtual machine scale sets, right? VMSS, virtual machine scale sets. Basically, this concept in AWS is called as Autoscaling group. And the thing that VMSS does is autoscaling. What is autoscaling? Let's understand a real-time use case. So now we have deployed the Jenkins application in a virtual machine, right? We have deployed this Jenkins application in a virtual machine, and it is fine if this Jenkins application receives 100 requests. 1,000 requests, it is okay. But what if 10,000 people try to access this Jenkins? Automatically, this will stop working because it cannot manage 10,000 users concurrently or parallelly. So for that, what Azure says is, okay, if you have such kind of requirements, usually in companies, we have a defined set of numbers if you are using Jenkins, and sometimes there will be unexpected load, probably during your release cycle or probably during peak seasons where developers are continuously deploying their applications. So in such cases, what Azure says is, don't worry, we have a concept called autoscaling. Don't create the virtual machine as you created in the class. In today's class, I just went to the virtual machines and I created the virtual machine, right? But to achieve this autoscaling, where whenever 10,000 people try to access or when a specific load is exceeded, autoscaling can automatically create one more virtual machine. And if required, it can create one more virtual machine and install Jenkins on it. Of course, we have to do some configuration. But in today's class, what you need to understand is there is another way of creating virtual machines. We just learned one way where this is static. And if there is unexpected load, this way of creating virtual machines won't work. If there is dynamic traffic that is coming to your applications, let's say Flipkart, Amazon, they cannot expect the load, right? In such cases, they will go with autoscaling. And what autoscaling does is, depending upon the traffic that is coming in, it will load balance the traffic between these virtual machines. If it has to scale 10, it can scale 10. Or if the traffic is not coming as expected, it can also delete these things. So it can automatically scale and descale. That's why it is called as virtual machine scale sets. In AWS, it is called as autoscaling. There is a dedicated video where we will learn about autoscaling, different types of autoscalings, how to create the virtual machines using autoscalings, all the kind of things. We have a dedicated video. But because I explained how to create a virtual machine, I also wanted to tell you there is another way where you can dynamically scale up and scale down your virtual machines that you are trying to create. So that's the class for today. I hope you found it useful. Do let me know in the comment section, how did you find the class? And see you all in the next one. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.